Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today we're going to talk about the NAR proposed settlement changes and things you need to consider between now and August 17th. My name is Jillian Young. I serve as the president of PPR Realty, and I'm joined by Jessica Loy, who is the lead broker and director of agent experience at PPR Realty, Justin Bailey, who is attorney extraordinaire at GDC Law, and Brandon Carras, who is also an attorney at GDC, but he has a special place in our organization as our TitlePlus attorney, which is our preferred closing and escrow company. So we are so thrilled to have you guys here with us today. What we're going to talk about are the two main rule changes that the NAR settlement is proposing. So Jessica's going to go over those, and then we're all going to discuss exactly what you need to be doing now and things you need to be considering in the next couple of months. So prepare now so you don't have to panic later. So hey, Jessica, would you mind going over those two main rule changes that we can expect?
Yeah, certainly, Jillian. Thank you. So the first significant change is the removal of MLS co-broke compensation field. This means that the compensation offered to buyer's agents would not be publicly listed in the multiple listing service. The second change requires that agreements with buyers are to be executed before touring any property. And the reason for all of these changes is to aim for transparency and fairness in our real estate transactions.
That's right. So, Justin, can you speak a little bit about when these rule changes are going to take effect?
Yeah, the settlement itself has been rolled out. There's a substantial process that's undergone when you have a litigation that's a class action like this. They've received class certification, so they have a lot of steps they have to do in order for everything to roll out. They have to get approval of the settlement. There's a substantial process that goes through. And once the court does the approval, there's a notice provision, there's opt-ins. Right now, we're in those opt-in provisions. The first stage that will really impact you all starts to come in around August. And you've got to really start right now, though, preparing for that, because you don't want to switch all of your forms and all the data that you're going to be using, whether on the buyer side or the seller side. You don't want to start to make that change on August 16th. You don't want to start making it really on August 3rd. You should start to look at it now. There's a very high likelihood the settlement's going to be accepted. All indications are that it's going to be accepted. There could be a wrinkle that pushes it out further, but the whole part of this goes down to why wait? Why wait to do it? If it's about ethics in business and transparency in business, why not start ahead of time? Be prepared now, because if there's other agents out there that aren't prepared or they're waiting when it comes August, they could lose customers because they don't have the paperwork in place. So August 17th, that's your critical day. You've got to follow those two rule changes. Stop doing everything else, but don't wait till then. Start to do it at this point. Get the paperwork in place. Ask Jessica, ask Jillian, ask the people and resources there at Premier, where can I find a buyer broker agreement? Have one, have it ready. You don't want to be sitting there with a buyer going, well, look, I know you want to look at houses this afternoon, but we've got to find some paperwork, and I don't know where it's at. So start the process now, know where the forms are, and get them ready, because having it in place is going to serve you. You also don't want to end up in a position where you have a client and you've got to say, okay, now we got to sign these new documents. It's August 17th. Let's do this now. Be prepared just to get rolling with it. Get the process underway. Be transparent. People have heard about this settlement. People are nervous about the settlement. People don't know what it means for the industry, and that's common when changes happen. You can look at the California mansions tax. It was the real estate world thought that it was going to collapse the whole real estate market in California because there was an extra tax. People freaked out. It implemented. Things went smoothly once it got out there. This is going to do the same. There's a lot of agencies that are interested in making this happen, making it go right. PPR is one of those. And so for you all, the critical stage now is to get the documentation in order and be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so Brandon, you actually taught a class on buyer broker agreements and how to fill them out and things to consider. And Jessica, you guys ended up doing a workshop to help agents overcome objection handling, because really this is all new in Florida. It's not something that's required by state law. And to Justin's point, the settlement will probably not be approved until well into 2025. But these are the practice changes that NAR has made as a requirement to uphold their end of the bargain. And Premier Plus Realty also has to uphold these rule changes, just like all realtor brokerages that are opting into the settlement. So it really is a requirement. It's something that you need to do. One thing to note is that FARBAR, the Florida Realtor Florida Bar Association forms committee, is meeting, and they are promising new buyer broker agreements, modifications to maybe the listing agreement, modifications to a number of forms by May 30th. And then NABOR, the Naples Area Board of Realtors, their forms committee has also promised modifications to those same forms, their versions of those, by May 30th. So it looks like June and July are going to be big learning months for us, and we need to be ready and prepared. So I'm excited that we're going to partner here with Brandon and GDC to teach those classes and to get you prepared. But Jessica, do you have any comment on the buyer broker agreement modifications, or Brandon? I mean, you guys have taught this class. What do you think is coming in terms of those changes?
Yeah, as of my understanding, the things that to keep in mind when we're negotiating this is the different types of relationships you can get into with the client. So having a clear understanding of what those are, and we can go over that in the class. And your brokers we're all here if you ever have any questions, you want a better understanding. So that will help you make the best decision and advocate for your client to get them to understand exactly what your roles are going to be, how you're going to navigate the deal for them. And then that will just better protect you and the brokerage. And then also, I think just kind of understanding what it is you're going to be showing the client you'll be doing for them, having a better understanding of what roles you're going to be providing and how this agreement is going to show what your roles are, how it's going to lay out what your obligations are going to be, what you're going to have to do, and just kind of what the relationship's going to look like as a whole and how you're going to be compensated that at the front end before you do anything. At the days of just running around and showing a home before you have any agreement in place or taking your client to homes and stuff, I think has changed. And I think the documents are simple. They're not long. They're not complex. Just spend the time, sit down, read them yourself, and then go through it with your broker. If you have any additional questions, you should definitely do it regardless to make sure you didn't misinterpret something and just assume something else. Or call me, and we're glad to walk through it and talk through it. I think the change is now that this is the future, that everybody's going to be using this and become common practice. And it's the people that are willing to put the time in now and ensure that they're willing to make sure that they're comfortable with these agreements and knowing how to negotiate and advocate for why their services are needed. I think that these people will thrive in this market, and I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that just to emphasize the importance of reading through those contracts, because a lot of what we have to fill in as a real estate agent is a topic point for our conversation with our customers. And a lot of what is being talked about is having an agreement in place prior to touring property. So a lot of our agents in the state of Florida, we get that phone call. And since 2008, we've been presumed a transaction brokerage relationship. So there's a lot of jumping right to previewing property details and scheduling a tour of that property before actually having an in-depth conversation with these potential buyers on what agency law is and what that brokerage relationship is like. So for those that who really came into Florida real estate since 2008, it's very important to make sure you are well versed in the three different agency relationships here in the state of Florida. We have single agency relationship, a transaction brokerage relationship, and a no brokerage relationship, and they all consist of different duties or responsibilities as part of that relationship. And not a lot of us are very clear in how to communicate that and disclose that to our parties. So being ahead of it is just going to help catch us up, because then when there are these additional changes to the buyer broker agreements that we're not aware of at this point in time, then we can kind of stay up to speed with those smaller changes versus having to relearn the entire contract and putting together a new buyer presentation process to have that conversation. So a lot of us aren't used to having a pre-meeting with buyers before showing property, and it's going to be important now more than ever to make sure that that is in your routine, talking with new potential buyers.
And if I could just add on to that briefly, I think there's something that I've learned about a lot of the agents I get to work with that are Premier Plus agents. A lot of you like to get ahead of things. I've seen that. And so I can see and picture a lot of you going out and finding the current buyer broker agreement that's available. And so I just wanted to make a word of caution on that, because that current agreement doesn't follow all the settlement terms. Some critical pieces to that are the note section where you delineate what you're going to be doing. That needs to be more fleshed out and more detailed than the current form requires. There's some Section 4 changes that have to be done, but critical to this agreement, and part of what led to the settlement or the lawsuit, is this idea that the seller is always paying the commission, and that they're always going to pay the buyer's side. And there's a little notation of that even in the current buyer broker agreement at the end that says oftentimes sellers pay the commission and you're only responsible for above and beyond what that is. We've got to be really careful doing that, because that section there is what's really going to be a big change. That's going to be a big focus of what's being analyzed. Mm-hmm. And so if you go out and you want to jumpstart, make sure that you're clear, at least with your buyer. If you're doing a buyer broker now, tell them that section is going to be changed once the settlement starts to roll out in August. If they haven't purchased a home by that point, that section is going to become obsolete. So if you're going to jump ahead and start to do these buyer broker agreements, that's fantastic, because you're learning how to have the meetings. You're learning how to close the deal now. But keep in mind that come August, that agreement is going to have that substantial change at the end, and then the notes are going to change. So just keep that in the front of your mind, that when you are practicing selling these buyer broker agreements and having these meetings and making it happen, that section is going to be critical. And don't make them think that by signing it, that all of a sudden they're going to be entitled to the seller paying all their closings or their commission. And so be very cautious about using that one in that particular term.
Yeah, and to your point, Justin, the settlement terms outline that the buyer's agent is not to be paid more than what is in the buyer broker agreement. So let's say you as a buyer's agent and your buyer agree that your compensation is going to be X%, right? And your buyer chooses a property that is offering more than what you and your buyer broker agreement have agreed to. Well, that extra money is actually going to go to the buyer. It's not going to go to the agent unless the agent can negotiate that, renegotiate their buyer broker agreement and say, hey, they're actually offering more than what you agreed to pay me. Do you mind if I keep that? Or, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. And I really doubt that that's going to be a conversation that most buyer agents are going to have. But you need to know that even if someone's offering a bonus or offering more in compensation than what you've originally agreed to with your buyer, that money goes to the buyer, doesn't go to the agent. So it's really important that you get that amount that you and your buyer agreed to up front, and that you're both clear on those terms. Not to say that not everything is negotiable in a real estate transaction. There are constraints within how we operate, and that's what we'll be training on. But the thing to remember is that the buyer and the seller should be in control of what they'd like to do, what they're able to do, and what's according to their best interests. So we need to remember that that things continue to be negotiable right until the property is closed, and you just need to learn the new constraints and what's the most consumer friendly approach to all of those different scenarios.
Yeah, and Jillian, one thing to add to that is, when you're talking about that, if you're the selling side, don't try and do some backdoor deal with the buying agent about the bonus. Just if they come to you and they say, "Hey, just do the bonus to me, keep it off the records," don't do it. Just on that, and one of the things you kind of touched on, and maybe makes a good segue, Jillian, is the anti-steering language. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, please do. Over. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it, from my perspective, is that don't try and get around the rules by being sneaky. But part of being sneaky and what they're building out for is steering your person to a seller's home because of the commission guarantee, or trying to say, okay, well, look, I'm going to call Jessica and say, "Hey, Jessica, is your seller offering me anything?" Because it's not going to be on your MLS. So don't call Jessica and say, "Hey, is your seller offering anything?" Because I'm not going to show your house unless you offer something. What are you going to do? Are you going to pay us something? Don't do that. You may know people, and you may have those conversations. You think they may be benign. The problem with doing that is it's going to get out. Eventually it'll get out, and it's going to impact your position at Premier. It's going to impact Premier's position and liability that they're going to face. So when you're looking at, okay, this place is 3%, this place is 3% plus a bonus, this place is 1%. You're not going to see that, but don't try and figure that out by calling and saying, okay, I'm only going to start by showing 3% houses. Your duty is to your buyer. And you're going to want to make sure you fulfill the duty and not try and steer your buyer to a place that's going to max out your compensation. So I think that's part of this. Look at what you put into your deal and put into your buyer agreement, and who cares what's being offered? You'll find it. You'll negotiate it later, but you're not going to end up seeing it on the MLS because it's not going to be out there anymore. So, they may put concessions in. They may do information that sort of signals to you what's going to happen, but you've just got to be really careful to follow the direction of your client. Show your client the homes that meet their criteria, and don't exclude or direct places just because you're going to get an extra benefit out of it. And that's kind of what the sub part of what the settlement wants is create fairness, be ethical, and don't try and skirt the rules. And so I just wanted to add that there are some steering provisions where you're trying to guide and manipulate the facts and the cases, and that's going to be a subgroup of litigation that we're going to face is that. And given the market, sellers may get angry. Sellers agents may get angry because you see their house and see another house, and the other house offered more, and they're going to find out about it, and they're going to test the waters. There's always tester suits on these new laws. That's what we call them. They're testers. Someone's testing how much they can get out of litigation. And how much the courts will expand the rules for them. And you're going to see a lot of tester suits. So just be smart about who you're showing it. Make sure you keep a good record that you're showing everything, regardless of the number.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing to realize is that this is all about consumer transparency, what puts the consumer first, and we're here to serve them and their best interest. And so we need to understand what an antitrust violation is and what steering really is. And we can't just take, to Justin's point, we can't just take business practices that we've been doing, whether it's steering or not, or antitrust violation or not. The terms of the settlement are clear. We can't take what we think we can do or what we think we should do and just work our way around what the settlement terms are. We have a whole different way of operating now, and that is, we're not going to know what the offer of compensation is, if any, which is why buyer broker agreements are so important to get up front. It protects you, and then that should be a measure of freedom for you, because you say, okay, I've agreed with this buyer. I'm going to serve them to the best of my ability, and we have a good professional relationship now. I'm going to show them any and all homes that meet their criteria. We're going to put an offer in, and one of the terms that we negotiate and that we work through is the compensation entitled to the buyer's agent, just like any other term of the offer. So you should always treat your buyer equally, and I think the compulsion, or the thing that I've heard out there is, well, I'm just going to start calling all of these listing agents prior to showing a property and figure out what the cooperating compensation is. Listen, antitrust is all about competitors agreeing and creating contracts with one another to fix a price or suppress consumer freedom and the prices of goods and services. So we need to make sure that we are avoiding all of that, and that you show the properties that meet your buyer's criteria, and you work out the rest in the negotiation process. So we will not be encouraging you to figure out what the compensation is prior to that, unless your buyer has prompted that and said, hey, I understand that, I may be paying out of pocket, and I just really don't want to deal with that kind of negotiation. So maybe in writing, you guys decide that is something that you pursue, but at the buyer's direction and the buyer's written discretion. As long as we're disclosing everything, we need to make sure that your sellers and your buyers know that commissions have always been negotiable. They are negotiable, that they understand exactly what fee that they're going to be expected to pay, and exactly for what type of service, and exactly what agency law you're following, whether it be a single agent or transaction broker or no brokerage relationship. These are things that we need to get really, really good at articulating. So thanks for that, Justin. I appreciate it. So I wanted to go over 5 areas that agents need to grow in their knowledge and professionalism. And we can touch on these super quickly, but know that June, July, August, September, we're going to be training you heavily on all of these areas. So I want to sort of prime the pump. And it floors me how many professional, full-time agents, even top producers, have no idea about some of these things. So it's time to learn, and time to get really good at what these things are. So let's talk about Florida agency law. So Jessica or Brandon, whichever one whoever wants to take it, but can you tell me a little bit about agency law? Like what are the types of representation, and what are the basic differences in buyers working with buyer's agents?
Kind of understanding some types of it all. I mean, in agency law, that you have to have the different types of agency, which if you have a seller's agent, like a listing agent, you're going to represent the seller, which you owe the fiduciary duty to the seller, which is, I'm pretty sure without that, you'll come with duty of loyalty and full disclosure. You have your buyer's agent, which we're here dealing with here. So you'd be a selling agent, and that you'd be owing a fiduciary duty to the buyer, including loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting. You could be a transaction broker, which acts as a neutral intermediary, essentially assisting on both the buyer and the seller in a real estate transaction, and representing either party's interests exclusively, and then just kind of working through what that means and having the different fiduciary duties, such as real estate agents owing the fiduciary duties of their clients throughout the entire process, which is you're trying to really at all times have the best interests of your client to avoid any sort of conflict that could come around. I would say just outside looking in, I think that the best way when you're handling this type of agency relationship is to keep in mind that right now there's probably a little bit of a distrust out there, because I think most times when people are getting in relationships, they would think that the agent is just simply there for that person. I think if you're going to be a selling agent right now, having them understand that you're out there advocating and negotiating on their behalf, and then going out and doing that by laying out what exactly your jobs are going to be, I think will be the safest bet. And I think those are kind of the ways that, myself and Jessica, Jillian, Justin, and all those at PPR are excited to talk about and kind of dive more deeply down the road.
Yeah, definitely. I can share some things on there too for, agency relationship. I like to use for agents to understand that essentially an agency relationship is formed when a consumer is giving broker authority to act on his or her behalf. And you have the presumption in the state of Florida that we are a transaction brokerage relationship, unless, otherwise written for, let's say, single agency relationship or no brokerage relationship. Once we have that disclosure executed, then we are certainly acting in that with those responsibilities for B relationship there. But a lot of our consumers aren't aware in the state of Florida how things work. So it's our job as real estate agents to inform them of that and be inept in how to explain and fill out these agreements, because it's going to build trust with these potential customers or even clients of yours, in order to build rapport and to be transparent and sharing with them all the services and all of the duties that this relationship provides and benefits to that particular party. It's very important that they're aware of that up front, so the expectations can be more manageable for you as you go through the home buying process. So it's important to understand, at minimum, what each one of those agency relationship responsibilities are. But a lot of people don't understand with the single agency relationship that it has this higher level of fiduciary duties with obedience and loyalty, full disclosure, right? I mean, we have to certainly disclose anything that materially affects the value or future value on a property. But this takes it to a whole nother level, and not many agents are very clear on how to have those type of conversations or how to communicate with a different agency relationship. And that's where you can get yourself in trouble. So certainly want to make sure you stay within your lanes based on that relationship that's been formed at the forefront.
Right. And I think the whole conversation around this has to do with having your buyer and your seller understand the capacity that you're working in. When you begin a relationship with a buyer as a buyer's agent, you're presumed a transaction broker. You actually have no fiduciary obligation to them. You are representing the transaction, and you need to let your buyer know what the obligations are within the scope of that relationship, because the last thing we want is for a buyer to come back and say, hey, you didn't fully obey, you weren't fully loyal, all of those things. And so we need to make sure that we're educating them and we're clear. And if a single agent relationship, full fiduciary, is something that they do want to pursue, then we certainly have that option if that's something that you and the broker and your buyer want to pursue. But that's going to be really limiting for that buyer also. As the highest listing brokerage in Southwest Florida, that means you can't take them over the threshold of one of our listings if you're acting in a single agent full fiduciary capacity. So these are the things we're going to be training on and making sure that you fully understand, because there are a lot of coaches out there and a lot of talking heads on YouTube saying you need to go and do a single agent buyer broker agreement, or all of the buyer presentations are training the agents to use full fiduciary language. And we don't necessarily think that's in the buyer's best interest or the agent's best interest. And so we need to make sure that we're super clear on that. The other thing that we can go through really quickly that we're going to be talking through over the summer is procuring cause. Who started the chain of events that made the sale of the property happen. I think that we're going to see quite a few more procuring cause issues. You're nodding your head, Justin. Do you agree with that?
There's a couple of these topics that are going to be clear, ripe ground for testers. And look, lawyers have to make their money, I guess. And so they're good on testing lawsuits.
Yeah. And of course, we touched on buyer broker agreements. So of course, we'll be, as soon as those new agreements hit, we want you to read the current agreements, and to what you guys talked about earlier. We want you to be familiar with how they are now, just so you get familiar with them. But know that in a couple of weeks, there are major terms that are going to change. So we'll be training you on that. And then also your buyer presentations, how to do that in a single agency capacity or a transaction broker capacity. Paola, our director of marketing, and the broker team, they're working on a beautiful buyer presentation that you can use that would be compliant with the disclosure terms of the settlement, that will clearly explicate your agency relationship and your duties and responsibilities. So I'm excited about that. And then something that we really want to drive home is what to never say. What to never say, particularly if you are a listing agent, grabbing a listing, and as part of your marketing dollars, you choose to share a portion of your commission, or you would like the seller to share a portion of commission to a buyer's agent. We need to make sure that the way that we communicate that and word that is not sneering or compelling or pressuring a seller to offer compensation when they otherwise wouldn't if they had all the information. Does that make sense? So something that should never come out of your mouths is, well, if you don't offer compensation to the buyer's agent, no one will show your home. That should never come out of your mouth in any form possible. So yeah, that is y'all are gonna cause another round of all these litigations if anyone talks that way. So we'll be giving you what you can say and scripts that you can use in order to help the seller understand why offering a buyer's agent compensation creates a more frictionless transaction and offers the widest pool of buyers available, particularly marginalized and VA home buyers. You want to make sure that we're positioning your property in the best way possible, and the terms in the best way possible. Does anybody else want to add to that?
All I was going to add is, look, you guys got into the profession because you're people. You have people skills. So this isn't something new. The sky's not falling. You can close the buyers. It's just people skills, just like you would use if you were selling a home. If you can sell the home, you can sell the buyers. So just keep in mind that it's not the end of the world. It's an extra step. And you've got into this business because you're good with people, and that's all you have to be able to do to close these buyers. There will be competition, but there's already competition. So,
yeah, and I would just
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I would just add on that, especially because we do see a lot of headlines and articles in the news. We have social media channels and platforms where a lot of conversation can happen, and it's just really important to avoid discussing, any commission rates or any services in a way that's suggesting some standardization of the industry when all of it really is negotiable. So just a caution to you out there in the social media world is be very hesitant before you get yourself into those kinds of conversations with others. And if you have questions, please reach out to your broker support team. here at Premier Plus Realty, because that is why they are here in place, is to have those questions and conversations one-on-one with you. But just caution social media.
One thing I love about our business model is that we allow the agents to run their business and act as small business owners. You can set your commission amount. You can do a flat fee for your services. You can do a variety of things. You can have a tiered level of service. We really don't dictate what you do, as long as it's disclosed, as long as it's clear, as long as we know that your buyer seller will understand, and as long as it's ethical and legal, right? So many brokerages have really strict constraints on the amount of commission that you can charge and how you run your business, and they have every right to do that as a private business. But with us, agents really have the advantage in order to pivot and be flexible and the services that they're offering. And we're currently seeing agents come over. I think we had 20 some odd agents come over from these brokerages that have these constraints on them because they did want a little more freedom, particularly in the upcoming settlement term business practice modifications. So I'm really excited to see how agents are going to be able to grow and to grow their businesses through this. It's totally possible to do that. The agents that can learn and to submit to teaching and implement these practices, they're the agents that will thrive. So I think we've hit our time limit. So maybe want to wrap up. Any parting thoughts before we go?
I would just say that, this is an industry change. So this is new for everybody nationally here in the real estate industry. So the phrase, the playing field has leveled out, is essentially where our businesses are resetting to adapt to these new changes. And the more ahead and proactive you can be in putting that in place, the better success you will certainly see sooner. With handling this, as some of other parts of the country are not as proactive yet, and it's all professional development. And the more you can educate yourself and really be clear and ask a lot of questions, the more empowered and confident you will feel to be able to communicate that continuously with your future customers as well too. So, education.
I have something to piggyback off Jessica. Don't forget our slogan: proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
There you go. PPR. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm really excited to teach with Jessica and Brandon, and if we can snag Justin too for a class or two, that would be amazing. But you might be planning your family vacations over the summer, and that's great for you, but you need to be planning also for learning and growing your business and growing professionally, and how to navigate and survive in these upcoming changes. So we encourage you to make time on your calendar. And as a matter of fact, some of these classes will be required at Premier Plus Realty. So look forward to seeing you, and we're going to get through it together. And it's, my goodness, Premier Plus Realty has been through so much: BP oil spill, COVID, recession, all kinds of things. And in all of those times of hardship, agents have grown their business. Premier Plus Realty has grown. And this season is going to be very similar to that. I truly believe that. So look forward to growing with each of you. So thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.